Hello, I'm Heidi Jensen, Program Dietitian. Today we're going to go over how you will use your new weight loss tool successfully. The first thing we're going to kind of talk about is nutrition guidelines for successful weight loss following surgery, lifestyle and behavior modifications, and what to expect following your surgery. So we use an acronym called WEAPONS. The W stands for water, E is for exercise, P is for protein first, N is for no snacking or grazing, S is for vitamin and mineral supplements, and the final S is for support. These are really the basic rules that you need to live by. We know that they work, and the more that you follow them, the better off you're going to do post-surgery. So let's start with the W. Water, water, water. Minimum of 64 fluid ounces a day is critical. It's the single most important thing that you can do for yourself following surgery. It assists in the healing process, controls hunger levels, and rinses out waste products. It's okay to add small amounts of sugar-free flavorings if you choose, but try to shoot for at least half of your water intake from plain or just naturally sourced flavorings, things like lemons, limes, oranges. We're finding more and more that high quantities of artificial sweeteners actually can increase appetite and increase cravings for sweets. So we just want you to set yourself up for success long term. A couple other things that are different as far as with water is we want you getting in that 64 fluid ounces, but it's very important to separate your fluid from your meals. This means that you should stop drinking at the start of the meal and wait 30 to 60 minutes minimum post-meal to resume drinking. So the importance of that is that you need room for your protein and vitamin and minerals early on. But long term, drinking more water with your food will push the food through more quickly, which is going to make you hungrier faster. Your calorie level will likely go up, and you may not see the results that you're looking for long term. So the guideline is just try to make sure that you're drinking at least 1 cup of water every hour throughout the day for those 8 hours, and take off those 2 to 3 hours that you're eating your meals. The E is for exercise. So not only does exercise burn calories and is good for your health, but exercise also helps to preserve lean muscle mass. This is important because when you're post-surgery and you're in that quicker weight loss phase, we don't necessarily just break down fat mass, we can break down that lean muscle mass. Lean muscle mass helps to burn more calories, so it's going to help you get to your goal weight. It also helps to maintain your immune system. So focus on making movement fun and making exercise a habit. Even just day-to-day activities or increasing what I call purposeful movement, taking the stairs, parking further out in the parking lot, increasing the number of steps you take, maybe starting to wear a pedometer is all going to increase that amount of movement, and using your muscle is going to help to maintain that lean muscle mass. Post-surgery, you'll start walking the day of surgery, and you're just going to progress easily from there. Try starting to add in some light resistance weights or light dumbbells, and you can do up to below 20 pounds for that first 4 to 6 weeks kind of after surgery. The goal long-term is a minimum of 30 minutes of cardiovascular activity 5 times a week and 15 minutes of strength training 3 times a week. Our P is for protein. So it's important for women to get in at least 60 grams of protein a day and men to get in 80 grams. The early benefits of doing enough protein is helping to maintain that lean muscle mass and helping your body to heal. The late benefits of protein is that it's the lowest calorie macronutrient that takes the longest to digest. So protein gives us that feeling of being satisfied for longer. Long term, your diet is a higher protein, low fat, moderate carbohydrate diet. If we're looking at your plate, 35 to 50% should come from those lean proteins, 35 to 50% from non-starchy vegetables, which is anything other than corn, peas, and potatoes, and less than 15 to 20% should come from those complex carbohydrates. Our bread, starches, grains, even fruit is considered a carbohydrate. So early on after surgery, it might be more of a challenge to meet your protein needs. So you may want to use a tracking system, things like a smartphone app or using your computer, not to count calories like how you maybe have in the past, but really to make sure that you're meeting your protein needs. Some people will find that they also need to use a protein meal replacement to get a concentrated source of protein in for a period of time as they're progressing their diet after surgery. Those protein meal replacements might come in the form of a shake. Those shakes must meet the qualifications that they're at least 15 to 35 grams of protein with no more than 5 grams of carbohydrate and no more than 5 grams of fat. They come in a variety of different forms. They might be ready to drink, powders, clear liquids. There's also some protein bars that you can do post-surgery. Those need to meet the qualification of 12 grams of protein with no more than 20 grams of carbohydrate and no more than 7 grams of fat. Speaking of those protein meal replacements, you'll also be using those for a period of time prior to your surgery for a preoperative diet. During that time, you need to replace 2 meals a day with the protein shakes. If you're using a powder, it must be mixed with water. And then you can do 1 small meal with the palm-sized portion of a lean protein and non-starchy vegetables, which remember is anything other than that corn, peas, and potatoes. During that pre-op diet phase, you also want to make sure you're drinking that 64 fluid ounces of water, avoiding any snacks. If you're getting hungry in between meals, really focus on drinking your water. Avoiding those extra fats, sugars, and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates coming in the form of bread, rice, pastas, fruits, as much as possible. And also remember to take your multivitamin every day, particularly during that preoperative phase. The importance of our preoperative diet is that it shrinks our glycogen stores in the liver. The liver sits over the top of the stomach, so if we can provide that liver shrinkage, it not only is going to make the surgery a little easier for your surgeon, it's really reducing complications that can happen. Going back to our weapons, the N is for no snacking or grazing. This is probably one of the most important guidelines to remember long term. The surgery is created to help control your calorie level and portion size at those 2 to 3 meals. We need to have those fasting periods in between our meals to promote fat burning. If we're eating a little bit, called grazing, frequently, it lessens the body's need to burn that extra fat. It's also important to realize that snacks are habit forming and can really inhibit our weight loss long term. Think of the fact that theoretically that once you reach your goal weight, if you decide to add in a 100-calorie snack, maybe it's a soda or a sweet tea, maybe it's a healthy choice like a string cheese stick or a couple of almonds. Adding in only that extra 100 calories a day without increasing your physical activity could be equivalent to a 10-pound weight gain in a year. Most of us will agree that 10 pounds in a year is a big deal. Those 100 calories are a big deal. So it's important to remember that we just need to stick to our 2 to 3 meals per day. If you're getting hungry in between meals, the first most important thing to look at is if you're drinking enough water. Our bodies don't necessarily distinguish between thirst and hunger, and it might just be looking for the water out of the food. So focusing on your 64 fluid ounces of water in a day. Also going back to look, are you eating enough protein? Protein takes longer to digest, so it gives us that greater satiety. So if you're eating enough protein, it should help to control your hunger levels until the next meal. Our first S is for supplements. So you will need to take vitamins for the rest of your life. The purpose of this is that there is decreased absorption of some of the nutrients after surgery, as well as you're eating a smaller quantity of food and maybe a different variety of food. So we need to protect your body long term because these deficiencies can take a long time to develop. When they do, they can be mild. You may have symptoms of fatigue or anemia, but they can be severe. If we correct those deficiencies early, they're very easy to correct. If we wait until physical symptoms, they're much more difficult to correct. So we want to protect your health by being consistent with the vitamin program and making sure that you're following up every year to have your vitamin profiles checked. So what vitamins do you need? We're looking at doing a high potency multivitamin with iron, 1,500 to 1,800 milligrams of calcium citrate. Calcium does need to be split up into 500 milligram doses, which means that you'll be taking that about 3 times a day. We also need to separate our calcium intake from iron because they inhibit the absorption of one another. You also need 3,000 international units of vitamin D, as well as supplemental B12, either in a special oral form, sublingual, which means under your tongue, or a nasal spray or injection. Vitamin preparations can vary a lot in terms of contents, nutrient forms, and nutrient levels. We highly recommend that you're using a bariatric specific vitamin. They are created to provide the dosage of the nutrients that your body specifically needs post-weight loss surgery. And more importantly, it's delivered in a format that your new anatomy can digest and absorb. The stomach will make less gastric acid after surgery, so unfortunately a lot of the over-the-counter vitamins like tablets are not going to be broken down effectively enough to improve your vitamin profiles long term. Those bariatric specific vitamins will start when you come about 1 week post-op. So we will be presenting those to you at your post-op appointment, and you'll have a chance to sample them. And our final S is really for support. We know that patients that have a strong support system tend to do better long term. So certainly developing those people around you that are going to support and encourage you, being connected to us. We offer support groups the third Thursday of the month at 6:30. You can visit our website at texasbariatric.com to look at the schedule, as well as to view videos of past support groups for topics that may be of interest to you. Also staying connected to us by looking at resources on our website. We have a new smartphone app on Apple iTunes or Google Play. If you search for us, it will give you a place where you can track your weight, take pictures, you can email the dietitian questions, look at vitamin schedules, book appointments. So it's really a way that you can have us kind of at your fingertips. If you use social media, certainly like us on Facebook or Pinterest so that you can have recipe ideas and different motivational things to keep you going long term after surgery. The key is to be connected because you're not on this journey by yourself. A couple other additional behavior modifications to pay attention to is taking your time to eat. Oftentimes we can be in a rush in our busy kind of pace and busy worlds, but it's important to take at least 15 to 20 minutes, but no longer than 30 minutes to eat our meals. And focus on chewing your foods to a paste-like consistency. The more that you're doing your mechanical digestion in your mouth, the more that your stomach is going to like that when it's healing and more delicate and sensitive in those early months post-surgery. You'll also need to avoid caffeine and alcohol for a minimum of 3 to 4 months after surgery. The caffeine and alcohol not only act as a diuretic, but they are also stomach irritants that can delay your healing process and increase the risk of side effects. It's also important to note that with the new anatomy, post-bypass or post-sleeve, drinking one alcoholic drink can secrete about 4 times the toxins. So you may feel the effects of the alcohol much more quickly, but even if you don't, we still need to be careful of protecting our health and our body long term, so trying to keep to a minimum of 1 drink in a 24-hour period. Also avoiding carbonation, straws, and chewing gum. So all of these things can introduce air into the digestive tract, which might cause bloating or pain after surgery. So you just want to be aware of your behaviors and try to eliminate sodas and any type of carbonation. So what will your diet look like going home? What happens after surgery? The first week you will be on clear liquids. That means trying to really focus on your hydration, which is really promoting that healing process. So drinking water, using things like fat-free broths, sugar-free Jell-O, sugar-free popsicles, decaf coffee, or decaf tea. It's very important that you try to follow that clear liquid diet that first week until you come to see your surgeon at that first follow-up appointment. That's giving your stomach time to rest and heal post-surgery. Your follow-up appointment will begin on that following Thursday at 10 o'clock. We have a series of classes. One will be on the nutrition guidelines and behavior modifications to help you be successful long-term. We will go through diet progression. On that day, we review foods that you can begin adding in, things like your protein shakes and other semi-solid foods, as well as giving you lots of meal plans to help you increase your foods as you're tolerating them up to kind of that normal consistency. A nurse will go through some post-op care. We'll also have information on exercise, talk about the vitamins that you need, and give you a chance to sample them on those days. Following the classes, you will see your surgeon. Congratulations on starting a journey to the new you. Hello, I'm Heidi Jensen, Program Dietitian. Today we're going to talk about basic nutrition principles. We're going to review the principles of weight loss, macronutrients, and meal compositions. So your weight loss surgery will help you lose weight by making it hard for you to eat as much and by making you less hungry. It's still possible with making poor food choices and being inactive that you won't see the success with the surgery that you're looking for long term. Certain behaviors can promote weight gain. Eating frequently throughout the day, drinking high-calorie laden sodas, things like sodas, sweet teas, and other calorie-laden drinks, drinking with our meals, and repeatedly eating larger serving sizes. So when we think about managing our weight, it's like balancing our checkbook. We have deposits, which are the foods that we eat. We need to think about which foods need to be eaten more frequently, which foods need to be limited. Basically, which are those everyday foods that we should have and the ones that are only once in a while. We also have our withdrawals. That's how we are spending or burning our calories. A calorie is the energy currency of our body. We need to find that balance and not over budget to find our happy medium and have that weight maintenance. So there are 3 types of macronutrients that provide calories. Protein and carbohydrates both provide 4 calories per gram. We also have the macronutrient fat. Fat is twice as calorically dense with 9 calories per gram. And not to forget that alcohol, although it doesn't provide any nutrients, it still does provide calories and has 7 calories per gram. We also have micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals, but the micronutrients do not provide any calories. It's important to remember that theoretically, 3,500 calories is equivalent to a pound. So if we eat an extra 3,500 calories without burning it, we might gain a pound. And vice versa if we're eating less. So let's focus a little bit on protein. Proteins are made up of amino acids or building blocks. Those protein foods can come from animal products, things like meat, fish, dairy products, eggs, or they may come from a plant-based food, grains, legumes, nuts, or seeds. The thing is with plant-based proteins is they don't have all of those building blocks or all of the amino acids in the one particular food. So we have to think about food combining to make sure that we're getting all of those amino acids or building blocks that are going to protect us long term. Protein is the most important macronutrient of a bariatric diet. Women need at least 60 grams per day and men need at least 80 grams of protein per day. It's needed for structure, regulating our body functions, and providing us energy. If you're not getting in enough protein after surgery, you may not heal as well. You may notice that you're having lower energy levels. You may lose more muscle mass or that lean muscle mass and lose less fat. We also, talk about people are concerned about hair loss, and protein may help with maintaining that hair structure post-surgery. So the goal is to shoot for 50% of our meals coming from protein, and we want to try to make sure that we're eating our protein foods first. The second macronutrient that we're going to talk about today is fats. Fats are needed for energy storage, cell signaling, transport and storage of our fat-soluble vitamins, and hormone production. That is the most calorically dense component of foods. Because it's so much higher than the protein and carbohydrates, we need to be cautious of how much that we're eating. We're also finding that those high fat, or what I call highly palatable foods, are also habit forming and addictive. The more that you're eating a high fat diet, the more that you're going to want and crave those foods. The other important thing to remember about fat intake is that our body is very efficient at storing extra fat. If you're eating a higher calorie diet than what your body needs and having a significantly increased amount of dietary fat, you can have a dramatic increase in the amount of fat storage that you have. So secondary to that, significant reduction in those intakes will help to kind of maximize your weight loss after surgery. Don't get me wrong, fat is, an important thing that we have to limit, but we do need to have some fat in our diet. There's certain fats that are called essential fatty acids. They're high in omega-3 fatty acids. Those have an anti-inflammatory effect on our body. They protect our organs and bones. So we want to make sure that we're including those healthy fats. Those are things like olive oil, canola oils, nuts, seeds, avocados. We just want to make sure that a little goes a long way, so we want to use small portions. And in order to avoid the fats that aren't as healthy for us, things like saturated fats and trans fatty acids, we want to watch out for foods that are fried and really all of the added types of fats that we add on tops of foods to make them taste better. Things like salad dressings, butters, gravies, sour cream, cream cheese, mayonnaise. We want to make sure that we're choosing alternatives to those calorie-laden, high-fat-laden foods, choosing the low-fat versions when we can, and really reducing our overall portion size. And lastly, let's talk about the macronutrients, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the main source of fuel for our energies and cells. It comes from all kinds of those starchy-based foods, breads, cereals, pastas, rice, crackers, tortillas, and fruits, as well as some dairy products. Carbohydrates and sugars give us a very little feeling of satiety. That means the more carbohydrates that you eat, the more calories that you're consuming, and you really become hungrier faster. So we want to make sure that those carbohydrates that we are choosing are what we call whole grains. That means that we're trying to choose the highest amount of fiber that we can. Now, some of those foods might be a problem early on after weight loss surgery, but we want to progress into those higher fiber carbohydrates. Things like quinoa, brown rice, barley, and just having them be a small portion size. What we really want to be careful of is what those refined carbohydrates that break down quickly into sugars. Things like white bread, rice, potatoes, soft drinks, fruit juices. They digest quickly into those sugars. You're going to make you hungrier faster, provide little satiety, as well as they can be habit forming and addictive. So when it comes down to the breakdown of our meals, we want to remember that 50% of our meals should come from a lean protein source. Those lean proteins are meats like fish, chicken, turkey, eggs, low-fat dairy products, or maybe a high-protein meal replacement drink. Your meals should look that about 50% is coming from that lean protein intake, 35% from non-starchy vegetables, which is anything other than corn, peas, and potatoes, and then like 15% or that condiment to the meal is really your complex carbohydrates, starchy vegetables, fruits, or those high fiber complex carbohydrates. You want to make sure you're eating your protein-based foods first, then moving on to your vegetables, and trying to save those carbohydrates for last. The most savvy consumer in making sure that they're knowing their basic nutrition needs are going to track their intakes in some way. So we want to make sure that we're managing our portions, occasionally measuring the foods we eat to actually know how much we're consuming. We also want to make sure that we're looking at food labels or the nutrition facts panel. It's important to pay attention to the information such as how many servings are included and what that portion size is, because the information that's listed is only going to be for that specific serving, and we need to be realistic about how much we're consuming. Thinking, is the food a high quality protein and how much protein does it have? Is the food low in calories? Is the food low in fat, especially saturated or trans fat? A food is considered low fat if it has less than 3 grams per 100 calories. Also looking at the sugar, we want to try to keep that sugar content to less than 12 grams per meal, as well as trying to decide if the food is a good source of dietary fiber. So the savvy consumer is going to track their intakes using a tool to help them be accountable long term. We have numerous different things to help us with that. You can download food records that are pinned to paper off of our website. You can download smartphone apps on your phone, such as MyFitnessPal or Lose It, or there's websites that can help you kind of track your intakes, things like Spark People or Super Tracker. We want to also look at, to go back, we've talked about what kind of we're putting in and what we're spending, and then we also want to talk about our withdrawals and how many calories that we're using. So our calorie expenditure is based on 3 main components. One is our basic metabolic rate, or BMR. Over half of the calories that we burn are used for basic life-saving processes. Things like breathing or heart beating, digestion, they're all burning calories. We also have our day-to-day activities: sitting, standing, cooking, doing housework, taking walks, going into work. Those do not minimize the effect of increasing the amount of the purposeful type of movement in our day-to-day lives at helping with our calorie expenditure. Also engaging in more physical activity. Part of long-term weight management and helping us with energy balance and our energy budget is finding regular physical activity that we enjoy. Start with something small, and you're gradually going to be working up to having more physical activity and things that you can enjoy. Congratulations on starting the journey to a new you. Hi, I'm Heidi Jensen, Program Dietitian. Today we're going to talk about your vitamin and mineral needs after surgery. We're going to review why you need vitamins, what supplements that you'll need to take, as well as discussing the bariatric specific vitamins. So we all need vitamins and minerals every day in adequate amounts in order for our bodies to function properly. Weight loss surgery can contribute to vitamin deficiencies because of the decreased intake of food, changes in variety of food, as well as a change in the absorption of certain nutrients caused by a change in the anatomy. So let's look at the gastric bypass. The nutrients that are most at risk for deficiencies are iron, calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12, folate, and thiamine. In the gastric sleeve, the nutrients that are most at risk are vitamin B12, calcium, iron, and thiamine. In the adjustable gastric band, the nutrients that are at risk are folate, vitamin B12, thiamine, and bone loss. When our body's lacking in nutrients for days, weeks, or months, life-threatening or debilitating consequences can occur. You may just start feeling tired, more fatigued, which can be signs of an anemia. There can be poor immune function, contributing to increase in cancer risk, cardiovascular disease, or side effects from diabetes, bone loss and fractures, neuropathy or neurological effects. More serious complications can be damage to the heart or blindness. In order to protect your health long term, we need to be compliant with the supplement program and making sure that you're getting your vitamin levels checked every year. If deficiencies are caught early, they're very easy to correct. If we wait for physical signs, they're much more difficult to correct. So let's look at which supplements you're going to need. You will need a high-potency multivitamin. It needs to contain 100 to 300% of the daily value of B2, B3, which is niacin, B5, which is pantothenic acid, folate, and biotin, at least 200% of vitamin B1, which is thiamine, 300 to 200 IUs, which stands for International Units of vitamin E. For vitamin E, we prefer that it comes in a natural form. So when we look at the label, we want to make sure that it has a D in front of it, such as D-alpha tocopherol or D-alpha tocopherol succinate. not a DL. The DL is going to stand that it's coming from more of a synthetic source. Also should contain 100 to 200% of vitamin A, 60 to 500 milligrams of vitamin C, 100% of the daily value for zinc, selenium, copper, manganese, chromium, molybdenum, and ideally will also contain choline and inositol. You'll also need to take extra iron, possibly up to 45 milligrams per day for a gastric bypass patient and some sleeve patients. You need to talk to your provider who will help you evaluate the type or the quantity of iron that you should be taking. One unique thing about iron is that we need to separate it from any time that we're taking calcium by about 2 hours. The iron and the calcium inhibit the absorption of one another. We also need to take vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 can be taken as 1,000 micrograms sublingually, which means under the tongue, once per week. There's also an oral form of vitamin B12 that is absorbed efficiently called methylcobalamin. That might be included in your multivitamin. Another source could be nasal sprays or injections. So there's multiple different forms depending on which you prefer. We also need to supplement with calcium. Calcium needs to be in the form of calcium citrate in order to have an improved absorption rates. Your body needs 1,500 to 1,800 milligrams per day total. We do want to count up the amount of the calcium that's included in your multivitamin. But remember that the body can only absorb about 500 milligrams of the calcium citrate at any given time. So we need to divide that calcium out into 3 separate doses. You'll also need vitamin D. The guidelines for vitamin D are for 3,000 IUs or international units per day, and this does also include any vitamin D that's included in your other supplements. So we highly recommend that you do a bariatric vitamin. Vitamin preparations vary a lot in terms of their contents, nutrient forms, and nutrient levels. We find that patients that are taking the bariatric specific vitamins have improved bariatric vitamin profiles. The reason for this is that these vitamins are created specially for your new anatomy, providing the dosage of the nutrients that we know may be malabsorbed, as well as being provided in a way that your body can actually absorb and utilize. It's important to note that after the bypass or the sleeve, your stomach is going to create less gastric acid. And so unfortunately, over-the-counter vitamins preparations, especially things that come in a tablet, may not break down effectively enough to be absorbed and utilized by your body to prevent vitamin deficiencies and decreases in your vitamin profiles long term. We want you to think about, the cost of the vitamins. The bariatric vitamins preparations that include all of those different nutrients that you need run anywhere from $35 to $65 a month. If we compare the amount of those nutrients to some of the over-the-counter supplements, you may need to take such a high dosage, and along with the risk of developing those vitamin deficiencies long term, it may not be that great of a cost savings. It's really important that you're investing in your new healthy life. Consider these comparisons. The average American consumes 2 soft drinks a day. That's on average $2 a day, which can add up to $60 a month. It's also known that the average American eats out at a fast food restaurant 2 to 3 times per week. If we take an average meal of $6 3 times a week, that's $72 a month. These are changes that you're likely already going to be making after weight loss surgery, so why not invest in you and make sure that you're protecting your health long term? So when should I start my vitamins? You want to make sure that you're talking to your provider about any supplements that you maybe need to take prior to your surgery. They'll be checking your vitamin profiles to see if you're going into the surgery with any deficiencies that need to be corrected. You won't start on those bariatric specific vitamins until after surgery when you come in for your 1-week follow-up. The bariatric vitamins that we present and we recommend will be talked about in that diet progression nutrition class, and you'll also have a chance to sample them. Remember that you'll need take those vitamins for the rest of your life, no matter how great you feel, to make sure that you're protecting your health. Congratulations on starting the journey to a new you. Hi, I'm Heidi Jensen, Program Dietitian. Today we're going to talk about behavior modifications for success post-weight loss surgery. We're going to review mindful eating, keeping food records, overcoming emotional eating, and weight-proofing our homes. The modern way of life has become perpetual motion. We're always racing from one task to the next, barely knowing what we're doing, multitasking, and unfortunately this has also started to include our eating habits. Do you eat in your car or in front of the television? Have you ever sat down to finish a meal or scrape the bottom of a bag of chips without even realizing that it was your last bite? What is important is trying to become more aware of our food and how our bodies feel when we eat it. This promotes mindful eating, or also what we can say is being present in the moment when it comes to our nutrition. We need to think about how our body feels as we're progressing through a meal. How do you feel when you're satisfied? How do you feel when you're overly full? Do you know where your food's coming from and how it is fueling your body? These things are what's known as mindful eating. We need to make sure that we're slowing down. Plan to eat your meal in about 15 to 30 minutes. We really don't want to eat less than 15 minutes and be eating too fast, but we also don't want to spread out your meal where you're eating longer than 30 minutes. Focus on chewing every bite at least 20 to 25 times. Chewing your food to a paste-like consistency is going to help with the tolerance of foods post-surgery. It also helps us become more in tune with when we're satisfied and when we're full. Physically set your utensils or food down between each bite. It helps us, instead of like preloading where we're eating very quickly, we need to force ourselves to take a step back and eat more slowly. It helps some people to use smaller spoons, even things like a baby spoon, to force ourselves to take smaller bites. We want to try to decrease distractions when we're eating. Try to eat at a designated place in your home or at work. This shouldn't be in front of the TV, and it shouldn't be at your desk while you're working and doing other things and multitasking. Turn off all the distractions. Turn off the TV, shut off your phone, turn off the iPad, and stop looking at your computer and checking emails. That can wait. We need to clear our mind before we start eating. If you're stressed or upset, you might even learn to take a few deep breaths to try to relax and focus on the next activity in mind, and that's really focusing on our nutrition and the meal that's at hand. Notice your food. How does it taste? How does it smell? What's the texture like in our mouths? Physically looking at the plate. Is it colorful? Thinking about which bite is going to be most enjoyable. Is it your first bite, your last bite, or one in between? Notice how your body feels. How do you feel before you start eating? When do you know when you're hungry? What sensations do you experience? I recommend that you try to rate your hunger on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 not being hungry at all and 10 being ravenously hungry. We should be eating when we're somewhere in between. Constantly ask yourself when you're going to reach for food or even drinks that are full of calories if you really need to be eating that, or if you're mindlessly eating or emotionally eating based on being tired, bored, stressed, sad, lonely, happy. All of those things can lead us into the direction of food when it's not actually mealtime. How do you tell when you're full or satisfied? It's important to learn our body cues so that we can stop before we're to that point of being overly full. What helps some people is just learning to keep food records. I know food records can be tedious, and I know every dietitian has probably asked you to do that, but it really helps to keep us accountable and mindful of what we're actually eating. It's going to allow you to learn about your eating habits. What are your triggers? Do you graze constantly between your meals, or do you stick to your 2 to 3 meals per day? What foods keep you the most satisfied? When do you fall off your eating plan? Is it when you have a certain emotion, or is it because you're not prepared or you have a lack of time? The important thing is we need to learn what your habits are so that then we can set yourself up for success. Food records are only going to be as good as what you put into them. So we need to be honest, and you need to be diligent when you're tracking. They're really meant for you to be able to learn about yourself. So what do we do when we're tracking foods? We need to record everything, every food and drink that we consume. When I say everything, I mean everything that passes your lips on the days that you're keeping your food records. Include any meals, any snacks, any drinks, any candy, any chewing gum. Write down what time you're eating and how long it took you to eat it. And also think about noting your hunger level. Remember, we're rating our hunger on a scale of 1 to 10 so that you begin to notice what your body feels like when it's hungry and when you're actually eating. Record your mood and your thoughts when you're eating. Do you tend to eat more or less when you're stressed? Do you tend to eat more or less when you're happy? We need to come up with the connection of how our emotions can affect the amount of food that we eat. And also recording the amount of the food. And for a while, even get out your measuring cups or actually weigh your food. You don't have to do this every time, but we really need to have a really good estimate of how much food is actually going on your plate and what we're consuming. And then last but not least is including things like the cooking method or the brand of the foods. So when it comes to keeping food records, everybody has a different way that works for them. You can use a paper copy. You can find copies of food records off of our website that you can just keep with you and take pen to paper to write down everything that you're doing. Some people prefer to use their computer and use websites such as FitDay or USDA Super Tracker. Or maybe you have your phone or an iPad and you can use like a smartphone app. My personal favorite is MyFitnessPal, but others have shared they like different apps like Spark People or Lose It. There's a lot out there, so just finding the one that works for you. Then once you've completed your food records, look them over and see what you observe. Are you eating enough protein? Are you drinking enough water? Did you eat more than 3 times that day? What's your highest fat or calorie contributions? How many calories are you drinking in beverages? What surprised you? Were you satisfied with your meals? Did you eat anything that was unplanned? You need to learn from what you're doing and then set yourself up for success. We're going to also kind of talk about overcoming emotional eating. We can all use food when we're not hungry to help us deal with a variety of different conditions. So I'm going to give a couple of different situations and examples to help us combat emotional eating. One is controlling stimulus control. That means keeping snacks, keeping trigger foods out of your house, out of your chest drawer. If you're going to want those foods, you're going to have to go out of your way for them. Practicing restraint. Limit your food consumption when you're in social situations where you might have a more difficult time being mindful of what you're eating. This might be only focusing on getting the smallest plate possible or only stacking a couple of things on a napkin. You really have to be careful of how much that you're doing. Come up with an alternative behavior. Learn relaxation techniques or come up with alternative coping mechanisms other than eating. Can you take a walk? What can you do to divert yourself? Have some social support. Find an accountability partner that you can talk to when you feel vulnerable. When you're in a state where you might be feeling down, feeling lonely, feeling stressed, come up with someone that's going to help you kind of pull through those phases so that you're not drawn to that emotional eating. We also have what we call compensatory planning. You want to try to plan ahead to have low-calorie items, things like carrots or other non-starchy vegetables, sugar-free popsicles, to have in situations where you might be prone to snacking on higher fat or higher calorie foods. Maybe it's the Super Bowl and there's going to be a lot of food around. Set yourself up for success with things that aren't going to help you fall off of your plan. Also, just having alternative thoughts. Distract yourself by doing something instead of eating. And also what is known as thought consequences. We really want to think about what our long-term consequences are for overeating. Think about what your motivation is. Why did you start on this journey? And come up with something that's going to visually remind you of what your motivation is. Maybe that's a picture, maybe it's a bracelet, maybe it's a place that you want to shop at, or it's a place that you want to visit. Have those visual cues and put it as many places as you can. The screensaver on your computer, a picture in your kitchen, on the refrigerator, or on the cupboard door. But we want to focus on that visual reminder of what our long-term motivation is instead of snacking or instead of making rash food choices when we're unprepared, such as going through a fast food restaurant or choosing that high-calorie beverage. Set yourself up for success. Also think about weight-proofing your home. Create a healthy, friendly environment. Put up those visual cues. Turn off all the electronics when you're eating. Purge your cupboards, freezer, fridge of all of those high-fat, high-calorie foods and temptations. If they're there, you're going to know they're there. You're going to be tempted. Make sure that you always have plenty of lean proteins and non-starchy vegetables that you can use to make a quick, easy meal. And keep your workout gear in sight. Keep your resistance bands or your weights sitting in a basket in your living room. So if you're sitting down to watch your favorite TV show, try to use those resistance bands or weights during the commercials. Something that's going to help to keep you on track. Think about items for your kitchen. Small storage containers so that you can always have food readily prepared. Vegetable preparation tools. Have a chopper, peeler, grater, or steamer. Maybe a non-stick countertop grill like a George Foreman grill. Various low-calorie condiments, so we're not using added fats, things like gourmet mustards or salsas. And also meal replacements, because there's going to be that time when you're not prepared, and instead of catching yourself in an emergency kind of red zone situation, you're making sure that you have your healthy choice right there. And also don't forget to have items to nurture yourself. It's all about rewarding ourselves for the good work done. So whether that's, taking a bath, drinking some herbal tea, lighting a candle, or getting a massage, do something that feels good for yourself other than using food. Set yourself up for success with all of these behavior changes. Congratulations on starting the journey to a new you.